Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of TEPSA Presents. This is our first episode in 2021, so we are thrilled to be back. My name's Todd Nesloni. I'm the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership here at the Texas Elementary Principal and Supervisors Association. Every 2 weeks or so, we like to bring you different episodes through our TEPSA Presents live streaming and the recording, if you're watching this recorded, of a variety of topics. One today that I am super pumped about. But before we even get into that, let me introduce my guest today, who is Tanner Olson, better known as Written to Speak on social media. Tanner, thanks for being here. Kind of tell everybody who you are.
Hey, everybody. It is so good to be with you all this evening. My name is Tanner Olson. I'm an author, a poet, and speaker living in Nashville, Tennessee. Before 2020, I would travel the country sharing poetry, telling stories at schools, churches, universities, organizations, and teaching some lessons as well. But since 2020, I've been writing poetry and sharing a bunch of it online and on my website.
Well, Tanner, I'm super pumped to have today's conversation. You know, when I thought about what I wanted to start the year with for our first TEPSA Presents for 2021, you were the first one that came to mind. And when I reached out to you, we were like, let's talk about the power of poetry and the power of our words in general. Because anybody who knows me or follows me knows that I was not a fan of poetry until just the last couple of years. I thought it was all William Shakespeare, and I just couldn't get into that no matter how hard I tried, until I started finding authors like Kwame Alexander, Jason Reynolds, Ian S. Thomas, and you. And so I'd love to know, as we start this conversation today, tell me a little bit about your journey into falling in love with poetry.
Yeah, well, I was the same as you. I didn't really like poetry. And I think poetry, there's this like connotation that comes along with it where it's like, it's just Billy Shakespeare, or it's just like romance or love poetry, or it's not for boys. And the more that I studied it and the more that I learned about it, the more I realized, well, that's just not true. Poetry is just a different way to communicate larger messages. And for me, I grew up I loved music. I loved punk rock music, but I can't sing. Can't play music, can't dance. That's not important, but I can't do that either. But like I could not, but I wanted to, but I fell in love with the words that they were singing. And I thought, well, just because I can't sing it or just because I can't play a guitar doesn't mean that I can't write lyrics. And so I started getting into poetry by just writing song lyrics and by seeing those words come out on paper. And then for me, it was also this great tool and this great cathartic thing just to put words down on a piece of paper. And I found that the more that I would write, the better that I would feel. And that got me hooked pretty fast. So just like you, really wasn't a fan of it. And then I just dove headfirst and could not stop writing.
Well, I am thankful that that was your journey, because I know there's been a lot of your work that's really inspired me. And that's kind of why I wanted to bring you on today too, because, this TEPSA Presents speaks to administrators or aspiring administrators, educators, parents, all kinds of people. You and I are both very aware of the power of words and how we can use words to express ourselves in different ways. But also, what I love about poetry is it is such a powerful tool to find different ways to express yourself, whether you are consuming somebody else's poetry or creating your own. And so, I'd love to hear from you. How do you see people using poetry, especially during difficult times? I mean, we're dealing with political unrest, social unrest. We've got things happening in our country that never have before. We've got a pandemic. There's people losing their jobs. I mean, there's a lot going on right now emotionally. But I know that your footprint has increased a lot during this time because you do focus on a message of hope. And so how do you see people using poetry or words to kind of keep that hope alive?
Well, going back to what you were saying at the beginning, one of my favorite things to do is before I could, but when I would go into classrooms, or even now when I get to Zoom with classes and I'm introduced as, this is Tanner or Mr. Tanner, and he's a poet, and you can kind of see the kids go, oh. But then I begin to share my poetry and they're like, oh, that's poetry. And I'm like, yes, this is poetry. Like, well, I like it. Like, well, you're allowed to like it. You're allowed to like poetry. You don't, just because the word's poetry doesn't mean you don't have to like it. You can like it. And so what I love going into classrooms and even Zooming with schools right now and seeing these kids go from, I don't like poetry to, well, can I write a poem? Can I
Mhm.
write something like that? And I think that what I'm able to do, or what I want to do, is through my words is I want to spread hope. I want to turn faces from like this, I don't like this, to like, oh, this is interesting, or why do I feel more hopeful by this guy sharing words off of a page? And
Right.
I want people to realize that they can do the same thing. When for me, like I was saying earlier, just putting the words down on a piece of paper helped me remember the things that I know to be true, or the things that are deep down inside of me, or the things that I just need to get out. And so in this time of just great uncertainty and a time of great unrest, I know that people are eager to hear something honest
Mhm.
and something real and something hopeful that isn't breaking news and that isn't full of
Right.
division, but it's reminding people of, hey, there is still good. Good is still on the way, and hope is still a real thing. And sometimes in situations like this, it has to take a poet for that to be announced, because maybe it's not going to be from a teacher, and it's not going to be from some sort of musician or celebrity, but it might just come through through just a guy, you know.
You know, what I've loved is the some of the stuff that you've shared in particular, it's kind of been like, I didn't know those were the words I was looking for, but it gave me comfort to hear somebody else share them. It's just like, we're all on social media and we all share quotes that we see and images and things like that. And yours has been just a constant place of power and hope. I'd love to know, in that process of you sharing, and I'm sure you get feedback all the time, is there one that really sticks with you, of somebody who reached out that those words really meant something to them? Because I know for me, I share your stuff, and when I was a principal, I shared it in email lists and things like that to my staff, just as a little upbringing or a little uplifting. I share it on my social media now, and I hear people say all the time, like, "Thank you so much. I needed these couple of words just I didn't even know I needed it, but I needed it." Do you get any feedback like that?
I do, and it's overwhelming every single time. And to go back, thanks for sharing my stuff. That I mean, it the other day I got on Twitter and it was like I had 20 new notifications, and my first thought was, Todd must have shared something. And it was fantastic, and it was true. You did, so thank you. But the messages that I've gotten, and like you said, well, the best messages that I usually get are the ones that say, hey, what you said was what I was feeling, or you put into words what I've been trying to put into words. But the messages that always stand out to me are the ones that are, hey, I was going to take my life, or I was going to
Mhm.
commit suicide, or I was thinking about ending it all. And then I listened to this poem, or I read this poem, or I looked at your sticker, something like that. And that for me, that's a game changer. And because that invites somebody into something so much more, and it allows them to see, oh, hey, hope is real. Hope is for me, and I can continue through tonight into tomorrow. And that's why I do what I do.
Mhm.
It's not for fame. If I was trying to be famous, I wouldn't do it through poetry. Let's be honest. But like it's trying. I want to get out of the way, and I want people just to sit with some words that can remind them that it's going to be all right. Yes, it's heavy. Yes, life is hard. But like I say, most of the times I get to speak it, that and all that is heavy, there is hope. In 2020 was heavy, and 2021 is proving to carry a lot of weight as well. However, I'm going to keep coming back to hope is real.
One of my favorite quotes of yours, and I've got the sticker and the shirt and everything, because for me, it's like a personal reminder to constantly see it, is the hope doesn't let the story end. And I remember that because I think that was probably the first time I ever heard about you. And that one sentence just hit me between the eyes, of just how powerful that thought is that hope doesn't let the story end. And
Hmm.
like I said, this TEPSA Presents, is really designed to speak to those in education. And so I'd love to know from you, thinking about administrators right now, and, the weight that they're carrying is unlike any time in our history of education. The weight that our teachers are carrying is unlike any time. And anything we can do to lighten loads, to give hope, those are so important right now, just as much as the academic content. And so, if you were to share an idea with administrators today of something they could do with their teams, what would be an idea you would have?
I feel like the correct answer would be to write a poem together, but I wouldn't want to do that. Everything is hard. Everything is difficult. Maybe it's just sitting and being silent, and maybe just journaling or writing. It's getting back to the basics, right? I know for myself that when I take time just to sit and to be and to write in a journal and to kind of cancel out all the noise, that I'm able to sit up, take that next step, and I take that next step with more confidence and
Mhm.
feeling lighter. So I don't have like an activity for teachers to do. That's not my forte. But I will say that one of the reasons why I write, and one of the reasons why I say time and time again that I speak at schools is because I want to come alongside teachers, because I know that their jobs are exhausting. I
Mhm.
know that they are putting in hours and hours and hours of work, and and they're getting a lot of messages, and not a lot of them say thank you. And so
Yeah.
I want to come alongside teachers and administrations and say, hey, um, I can take 30 minutes and share some poetry with your students if that's what you need. I would love to help out in that way, because I also believe that there's those kids out there, like they just need to see somebody else share poetry for them to realize that they can write poetry. Because I believe that our third graders and our sixth graders and our ninth graders, that they are the best poets that our world has.
Mhm.
They just don't know it yet.
Speaking of sharing that poetry, you do more than just write it. You are
Mhm.
also a spoken word poet, and I got to see you perform, and that was my first time to ever see spoken word poetry performed in person, and I was just blown away with how different it sounds when it comes off the page from the author's mouth. And so, when did you decide that what, I want to do more than just put it on paper? I want to figure out like a cadence and share this out,
Mhm.
because you make a ton of YouTube videos too.
Mhm. Well, that was the goal when I first started Written to Speak close to 8 years ago. I had watched some other poets and musicians put out videos and be on stage and share the poems that they had written, and I was like, well, I want to do that. Like going back to what I said earlier, I wanted to be a musician, but that wasn't in the cards for me. So I was like, well, I still want to be on stage. There's always that little piece of me that wanted to perform and to share in front of others, and so that was kind of what started it all. But it probably took 5 years of me being up in front of people, speaking and sharing, before I felt like what I was doing was what I was supposed to be doing, and doing it the way that I thought that I should be doing it. It took quite a while. I made a lot of mistakes when I first started doing it. My poetry was kind of angsty and angry, but I was also like 22, so I was a little angsty and angry. So, but now it ranges. I mean, and you got to see the show where I did. There's poems that are extremely serious, and other ones where I think I shared a poem called SpongeBob Oval Pants, which, if, shocker, it's not a very serious poem.
Well, Tanner, one thing too that you've done that has really resonated with me is, at the beginning of every year, we see people from all around the world talk about their one word for the year, their one word focus. And, being an administrator, I remember running in administrator circles where it's like all the administrators are encouraging their staff to do the one word, and they make little things. And we had a wall with one words one year, and we do all these really cool things. But I know me personally, I've always struggled with the one word because primarily of my ADHD. Like, I'm like, by March, I'm over the word. Like, I don't even want to see this word anymore. I'm so tired. I don't even know why I chose this stupid
Yep.
word. Or I'm sitting in March going, I don't even remember what word I chose. I guess I just choose a new one now and tell everybody this is what I've had since the beginning of the year.
Was
But
this year, or was this one from last year, or was it from the year before? I don't remember.
exactly. And it's
Either
like,
way,
well,
it's a vibe.
nobody even
So
remembers. So I'm just going to
yeah.
make it up and say, this has been my word all year and it's meant so much to me. But,
Mhm.
I have never really enjoyed that personally. But I came across last year from your work, came up with this idea to do 12 words for the year, a word a month. And
Mhm.
last year, you shared your whole year, and those of us who are following you, we went with the same words you did because you were blogging about each word each month.
Mhm.
And what I found through my journey last year was that was way more powerful for me because I was focusing on it for a month, and I very much thought about the word, that making it apply to that season of the year, whether it was testing season at school or summer
Mhm.
or holidays were coming up, or I know it's a difficult month because somebody passed away, like whatever. I chose really specific words, but it was really good for me to just have that reflection time to go, this is going to be my focus this month. I
Mhm.
really want to grow myself and be continually thinking about abide or reflect or, whatever it is. And this year you've kind of done it again, but you on your website, you have this blank 12 words where everybody can
Mhm.
do their own 12 words.
Yeah.
So my first question is, where the idea even come from, and what word have you chosen that really has meant the most to you?
Well, kind of like you were saying as well, man. Like I was gonna forget by March anyways. I really love the idea. I
Uh-huh.
love the idea of picking one word, and for some people it works. So don't listen to what I'm about to say. But don't leave. But I'm the same way. Like by March or April, like it wasn't going to matter to me anymore. And so I thought, well, this I still want to have one word that I focus on. And like you, ADHD, self-diagnosed, I can't focus on more than one thing at one time. So I'm just going to pick one word a month and go from there. And so for last year, I just sat down and I wrote down 12 words and I put them on the piece of paper and I said, these are my 12 words for the year. And it was crazy because back in December of 2019, we had no idea what 2020 was going to bring.
Right.
So it was kind of cool to see like how this word for April matched up at this time. And I forget what they are now, but it meant a lot to me in April, obviously. But and then just working through the year, it was great just to focus on that, to write about it, to see how it showed up in the other things that I was reading or in conversations. And so I wanted to do it again this year. And for me, like I'm trying to take it one month at a time and not be like, well, I'm going to need this word in July. I'm going to probably write that down when July comes. Or if the word that I picked in June is still relevant and I still need to focus on that, well, then I'm just going to carry it over to
Yeah.
July as well. And just to give myself a little bit of freedom, but to focus on a word and to kind of expand that as well throughout the year. And so this past year, it really allowed me to take time to pause, to focus, and to reflect. And that was exactly what I needed. And you asked, what's a word that
Mhm.
in the past for me, it is abide. I just love the word. I love the word abide, and to just kind of continue and to stay focused, to stay ready, to stay the course, and to stay by hope, to keep hope close as I move forward, and to abide in that, and to trust that, hey, everything's heavy, everything's difficult, everything's that hard. But for me, like I know that God has everything in control, and I'm going
Mhm.
to cling to that as I move forward, trusting that it's a lot right now, but
Yeah.
good is on the way.
Well, for the administrators who are listening to this conversation today, that would be a great activity to do with your team, is to sit there
Mhm,
and each one of you just pick a word for this month. Just even if you already did a word for the year, then maybe think of a word for February and talk
mhm,
about what goals are you going to set? How are you going to focus on that word for the month? And you could still have your one word for the whole year for those that love doing that, but
mhm,
still allowing each month to say, let's reflect on our word. Let's talk
mhm,
about it with the team. Let's do this little activity. Like there's a lot of really neat ideas of ways that administrators could really take the 12 words and run with it with their team and really just continually address it and grow it. And even as an administrator, I know I would probably make a list of everybody's word so that I could go in and personally check with them and say,
mhm,
hey, I know this was your word. Anything I can do to support you? I think there's a lot of really good power in this.
mhm,
And it's an easy activity that is no risk. Like you can't do it wrong. And that's what I
mhm.
love about this.
And there's a handout on my website for free. So there's that. And
That's
I've,
right.
I've even seen some teachers do it with their students
Mhm.
as well. They had their students pick out that word
Mhm.
and then they would journal about that, or they would write about it or incorporate it into something, um, which I thought was a fantastic idea. I was truly honored when people were like, using this, like, it's helpful. I'm okay. That's great. I'm so happy.
Well, speaking of students, you also recently started an online poetry school. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so poetry school, it was one of those things where because of COVID, I wasn't able to travel to schools and to share poetry, but I wanted to continue to just to share poetry and to encourage teachers to teach poetry and for students to be excited about poetry. And so I put together about 16 or 17 videos, and there's an educational PDF that comes along with it. And then afterwards you're able to Zoom with me and answer any questions or to share the poems that you've written as well. And so there's two different sections. There's one for second through fifth grade, and then 6 to 12. And I understand 6 to 12 is a very big gap. However, it is poetry, and I'm only one person, and I tried really, really hard. But the feedback that I've gotten from it has been great. I had a friend shoot. We shot all of the videos in a weekend, and it's truly a lot of fun. And it's so fun to sit down with classes and to hear these kids say, "I didn't like poetry before, but after we went through poetry school, now I can't stop writing poetry." So it's always fun to do, and to share the poems. And so I'm working on some new ones to add to poetry school. So that's going to be it's just like an open folder that once you purchase it, you have it forever, and you can use it whenever.
Well, I gotta admit that I signed up for the poetry school as well, even though I don't fall into those age ranges. But I still found use out of it because I mean I think any of us can find ways to be more creative and better writers, and so
Mhm.
I don't think there's ever really an age that you can put on that. So even if you're an adult and you want to sign
Mhm.
up, I would personally recommend it. But Tanner,
Yeah.
I know that so you've mentioned that you do Zooms and things with different classrooms and different schools in different ways because you can't really be in person right now. And I've
Right.
got to, I've seen some of the photos and love seeing the excitement built into kids. And so
Mhm.
I know you brought a poem to share today, didn't you?
I am locked. I am loaded. This is a newer one that I wrote that I've only shared a couple of times. It's titled "There Is a Poem Inside of You," and I recently started sharing it because there'd be kids like, I don't think I can write a poem, or I can't do it. And so I was like, no, there's a poem inside of you, and so I decided to write a poem about how there is a poem inside of you, and it's meant to be somewhat of an example, but also of an encouragement as well. And so it's about 2 minutes long, and it goes like this. I know you have a poem somewhere deep down inside of you. It's waiting to come alive. All you have to do is give it a little light. Just begin. Don't worry if you spell the words wrong or right. All that matters is that you start, because when you start, it's when you begin to make art. Maybe you'll write a poem about Mufasa and Scar, or your favorite YouTube star, or how you used to wish upon a shooting star as you'd ride in the backseat of your parents' car. Maybe you want to write about colors or frogs, or colorful frogs that make their way to the deep dark fog while floating on a wet log. Maybe you'll share a line or two about your crush and how just talking about them makes you want to blush. Maybe you'll rhyme robot with mascot, or spork with fork, or maybe you'll make up a new word like florkinado or splick and do, or maybe you'll just make a noise on the paper like rid it dit dit do. Maybe you'll put into words the kindness of a mother, or how we are to love one another. Maybe you'll scribble something that puts the smell of flowers into words, or about what life would be like if you were a flying bird. Maybe you'll write about Star Wars and Baby Yoda and Jar Jar Binks, or about the drip, drip, drip that comes from the kitchen sink. Maybe you'll write a poem that will become a song, words that we can scream along. Maybe you'll scribble something down about how $3 was more than enough, or when you could sleep only 4 hours and the next day wouldn't be rough. Well, as you write, take your time. Maybe you'll rhyme fine with shine, or shampoo with Scooby Doo, or monster trucks with monster ducks. Don't know where to begin? Choose a word, either or, this or that. Chit chat, thermostat, wildcat, acrobat, welcome mat, naked mole rat. You never know what the page will become when you let the words go. So let them go. And I know that there is a poem somewhere deep down inside of you, words that are brand new. Grab a shovel and begin to dig, because you never know what you will find. There are words buried inside our heart and our soul and our mind. Don't be afraid to give it a little time, because with a little time, you might just bring alive the poem that is somewhere deep down inside.
I love it. Oh my goodness. And I haven't heard that one. So that
I
was awesome.
know.
I can see like kids just eating that up because there were so many little buzzwords in there that kids say in their conversation that I can just see them totally devouring that. So I love it. I love it. Thank you,
Good.
Tanner.
Well, that was
Well,
the hope.
I know I shared in the comments as well, but if you're not seeing the comments or you're listening to this, you can go to Tanner's website, Written to Speak, T-O Speak, and check out his books, his resources, the poetry school, the 12 words for 2021, all that kind of stuff. Follow him on social media at Written to Speak on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Tanner, let's leave them with one final encouraging thing. If they're going to walk away with one thing today from this conversation over the power of poetry and words, what do you want to leave them with?
I can tell you with full certainty and full confidence that what you are doing, it matters. I would not be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for the teachers who took time to say, hey, you're a good writer. There's something here. And so I encourage you to just to take that extra second, that extra minute, and tell that student, hey, I see this in you and it matters. I see you and you matter. So teachers, thank you so much for all that you do, for the ways that you care for your students, for the way that you care for your students' parents. What you do, it truly matters, and it is making a difference. And I hope that things begin to get just a little bit easier for you. So thank you for all that you do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And from everybody here at TEPSA, thank you for joining us for another TEPSA Presents. Remember, you can join us every 2 weeks on our Facebook, YouTube, or podcast station and check out all the past episodes.